So how do you tell a story that lasts for 2,500 years? Well, you don't just write it down on paper. No, you carve it into mountainsides. You build it into the very foundations of your cities, and you stamp it on every single official document. Today, we're basically going to be detectives piecing together an ancient mystery to uncover what might just be the most successful branding campaign in all of history. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so our first clue is this. Just try to put yourself in the shoes of a 19th century explorer. You're traveling along a major trade route, and you look up and see this, a gigantic, super detailed carving hundreds of feet up a sheer cliff face. It's practically impossible to get to. I mean, the questions that would immediately flood your mind are just staggering. Who on earth could have made this? And what could they possibly have been trying to say that was so important it had to be put way up there? This incredible piece of work is called the Behistun inscription, and it's carved right into the face of Mount Behistun. For centuries, nobody had a clue what it meant. Its script, this complex system of wedge-shaped writing called cuneiform, was a complete and total puzzle. So yeah, those were the two burning questions for scholars. Unlocking this thing was like finding the Rosetta Stone for an entire empire. It was basically a proclamation, just frozen in time, waiting for someone, anyone, to finally be able to read it again. And when they finally did crack the code, the author's identity was revealed with this absolute, undeniable sense of authority. The very first line is so simple, but so powerful. Ego sum Darius Rex. I am Darius the King. This wasn't just some historical record. This was a personal declaration from one of the ancient world's most powerful rulers, Darius the Great. So who was this Darius guy? Well, he was an incredibly ambitious leader who came to power under, let's just say, controversial circumstances. See, he wasn't the direct heir to the throne, so he desperately needed to prove that he belonged there. He had to convince this huge, multicultural empire that he, and only he, was the rightful king. And that right there is the key to understanding all of this. The Behistun inscription is pure 100% political propaganda. It's his side of the story, how he crushed his rivals, restored order to the land, and of course was chosen by the gods to rule. And by carving it in 3 different major languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, he made sure that pretty much everyone across his vast empire could get the message. But, you know, a message on a mountain, no matter how big, just wasn't enough. Darius needed a stage, a physical embodiment of his power that would leave anyone who saw it completely speechless. And that brings us to our next piece of evidence. He built Persepolis. And listen, this wasn't just a city, it was an architectural mic drop designed to intimidate and impress. Imagine you're part of a delegation from some far-flung corner of the empire. You'd arrive here, walk through these massive gates, and just be completely overwhelmed by the sheer scale of Persian wealth and power. And when you zoom in on the details, it's even more revealing. Every single column, every carving was a statement. The level of craftsmanship, the exotic materials they used, it was all meant to communicate one very clear message. The resources of the entire known world flow to the Persian king. This is what absolute power looks like. So, Darius has broadcast his power on this monumental, empire-wide scale. But what about his personal brand? You know, how did he control his image on a smaller, more day-to-day level? For that, we turn to our final clue. This little thing is a cylinder seal. It's a small object that you'd roll across a clay document to make an impression. You can think of it as an official signature stamp. And the story this tiny object tells, well, it's incredible. The imagery on this seal breaks down his whole personal story so brilliantly. First, you've got Darius himself, not sitting on a throne like a bureaucrat, but out there in a chariot, a dynamic hero in action. Second, he's hunting lions, which was a classic symbol for royalty. It showed the king as the one who conquers chaos and protects order. And third, you see that divine symbol floating above him? That shows his rule isn't just because he's strong. It's because he has divine right on his side. So just think about that for a second. The message on this tiny personal object is the exact same message that's on that gigantic public mountain carving. It is an absolutely incredible example of consistent messaging, reinforcing his power at every single level of society. Okay, so when we put all of our clues together, the mountain, the city, and the seal, a really clear picture starts to emerge. This guy was a true master of communication. Each piece served a very specific purpose in one big unified strategy. The inscription on the mountain? That was his global press release. The city of Persepolis? That was his world stage, his showroom. And the seal? That was his personal logo, his business card. All together, they created this inescapable story of power. What this all really comes down to is that Darius understood a fundamental truth about power. It's not just about winning battles, it's about controlling the story. He used every single medium he had to craft a legacy, so durable, so powerful that we are still talking about it, still decoding his messages thousands of years later. It really makes you think, doesn't it? He used solid stone and clay to build his narrative. Our stories today are written in fleeting digital code. So what messages are we sending? And what, if anything, from our time will survive for the next 2,500 years?